Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we are talking about a pretty interesting change that Tesla has made to their marketing of FSD. We've also got news out of China, updates on Project Highland, and a few other items as well. After the long holiday weekend, nice bounce back for Tesla stock after the underperformance on Friday. Tesla today up 4.7%, closing at $256.49, while the Nasdaq was down 0.1% on the day today. All right, we'll start off with China, as we do have a handful of updates coming out of China. First, a couple of new sales figures. The insured vehicle numbers for this week have now been published. So for the week ending September 3rd, the number of vehicles from Tesla that were insured in China was 11,800 for the week. This brings the quarter-to-date number for Q3 so far through 9 weeks up to 101,000. So as we can see from the chart, this number is a little bit lower than what we've been seeing from Tesla over the last few weeks. Seems like we may now be starting to get to that cliff that we kind of expected from Project Highland and the impact that that may be having on Model 3 production while that changeover occurs. Model Y alone, even if all of the Model Y production is going domestically into China and not going to export, which is probably not the case, that would only support about 12,000 per week. So anything exceeding that level as we look at these week-to-week numbers as they continue to come in, that's going to have to come from inventory, whether that's on Model 3 or Model Y. Back to that quarter-to-date number, that 101,000 vehicles so far, that is still outpacing Q2. It's 95,000 through this point in the second quarter. But Q2 finished really strongly, averaging over 16,000 per week for the last 4 weeks of the quarter. So while Q3 is outpacing Q2 so far quarter to date, Tesla will need to average just under 15,000 per week for the remaining 4 weeks of the quarter to set another record, but that could be tough given the current situation for the Model 3. Now, the other new number that we have out of China is the wholesale sales figure for the month of August. Remember, wholesale sales is a combination of retail or domestic sales in China and vehicles that Tesla exported out of China during the month. For August, this number came in at just over 84,000 vehicles, which is a really nice bounce back to see from the just over 64,000 vehicles from July. But remember, July production was actually still pretty strong at just over 80,000 vehicles, so there was about 16,000 vehicles there added to Tesla's quote-unquote inventory, which would contribute to the 84,000 wholesale sales figure that we're seeing here for August. We'll have to wait a little bit longer for the full breakdown of Model 3 versus Model Y, retail versus export, and of course production. We should get that within the next week or so. And as usual, that will probably be the most interesting number because we'll get to see Model 3 production and see how much of a hit that took because of whatever's going on with Highland. In isolation though, I'm happy to see the 84,000 number for August. I think that is a strong number. All right, moving on to the other updates out of China. Interesting update to the design studio for the Model Y. Tesla has extended the estimated wait time for the long-range Model Y in China from 2 to 6 weeks previously, now to 6 to 8 weeks. This is only to the long-range version, so the standard range and the performance Model Y remain the same at 2 to 6 weeks. But in a period of time where people are so laser-focused in on demand, I think it'll be a welcome sign to see at least a little bit of an extension on one trim of the Model Y there in China. Of course, it might not be demand related at all. This could be because of production. Maybe Tesla is a little bit constrained on the long range for whatever reason at the moment, but could just as easily be from an uptick in orders. Maybe attention around Tesla and the Highland release has drawn more attention to the Model Y as well. Maybe people that were kind of holding off to see what the updates might be for the Model 3, now pulling the trigger on a Model Y. Who knows? The point is that it could be either demand or production related, and obviously we would hope for the former. Now, speaking of Project Highland or the updated Model 3, we continue to have new information come in. A number of press or reviewers have continued to post first drives with the updated Model 3, and as we talked about on Friday, so far these universally seem to be pretty well received, pretty positive, and a lot of the improvements that Tesla had noted that we had talked about on the night of reveal, they do seem to be coming through with reviewers, particularly in terms of things like interior quality, cabin noise, comfort, styling in general, etc. It does continue to seem like we got most of what was new, thankfully, in that first episode after the Model 3 release, but Bjorn Nyland did get a couple more tidbits of information here after speaking with one of the Tesla engineers at the Highland event. So apparently, previously the Model 3 used one motor for the rear liftgate. Now that is being updated to 2, one on each side, which Bjorn said had the effect of making things quieter during operation and more reliable. He also mentioned that this Tesla engineer specifically noted that they spent a lot of time considering reverberation or echo in the vehicle, and that the choice of mostly soft materials throughout the vehicle helps with that, as opposed to places where you may have hard plastic or something before, which is going to cause more reverberation. So with the new materials, everything should be better sound-wise, including the sound system, having conversations, having phone calls, and of course other effects from the environment. So we've known about some of those improvements, but interesting to hear a little bit more about the thought process going into it. Something else on Highland that is continuing to cause confusion is this front bumper camera. So we've now figured out that none of the press vehicles or the demo vehicles that Tesla has showed had the front bumper camera. Then of course we saw it in the design studio on some of the promotional materials that Tesla uses on the Model 3 page. However, all of those have now actually been removed. So for whatever reason, we seem to kind of be back into that Model S, Model X scenario where seemingly the vehicle would have hardware 4, but for now at least, doesn't seem to include the front bumper camera. So it seems pretty clear that this is something that Tesla is working on including. We've seen it on the Cybertruck, we've seen it now in this promotional materials for the Model 3, we've seen the connectivity for it with actual hardware 4 chip, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem like Tesla is quite ready to start shipping this yet. So whether it's hardware, whether it's software, whether it's both, hopefully it is something that Tesla gets resolved sometime soon, but for the time being at least, it does remain a bit of a mystery. All right, last couple of things on Highland. Of course, we're hearing reports out of China about strong demand for it. For example, there have been reports of tens of thousands of orders within the first day, the website crashing, etc. All that is great to hear. However, just take it with a grain of salt. First, we don't know if the reports are necessarily fully accurate. And while the peak is important, it's difficult for us to contextualize that peak from the outside. And what is obviously much more important than the peak is the sustained ongoing demand, which again, we can't really get a great sense of from the outside. So tons of things to be excited about here, of course, but things like that, we just have to remember to keep in mind the context that we may or may not have behind it. And then finally on Highland, we do have an update from TeslaScope, which seemed to have some pretty good earlier information about the status of Project Highland. They're saying that they're hearing right now Project Highland tentatively scheduled for Q1 2024 in North America. I think that seems most plausible as Tesla pretty clearly not trying to draw too much attention to it in the US yet, which suggests that it's still going to be a decent amount of time before any update. Okay, next up we've got an interesting update on FSD after a long time of auto steer on city streets being listed as a feature that is coming soon for full self-driving in North America. That coming soon tag has now been removed. So although this doesn't necessarily mean that FSD is out of beta or something like that, it does mean that pretty much anybody that's buying this option should be able to immediately access FSD beta. I think that actually has been the case now for at least a little while. The versions and the staggering of the releases of different versions makes things a little bit confusing on that front, but I think that's been the case now, so the website would be more accurately reflecting that at this point. Elon did also reply to a post from Sawyer Merritt that said, "This may seem like a small change, but it's a big one. This indicates that Tesla is getting very confident in FSD's capabilities." Elon replying to that saying, "Yup." And of course, it's also interesting from a deferred revenue perspective. So something we talk about a lot, but as a reminder, there's about $3 billion of deferred revenue sitting on Tesla's balance sheet right now. That's revenue that Tesla has not recognized because it's a product or service that they have not yet delivered. Not all of that is from FSD beta, but a lot of it is. And last quarter, Tesla said that they expected to recognize about $750 million of that over the next 12 months. We've seen chunks of that be recognized over the last few quarters as Tesla has made progress with FSD. This update on the design studio might indicate that Tesla is now confident to recognize another, perhaps significant portion. It also means that for all FSD sales from this point forward in North America, Tesla is likely recognizing a bigger percentage of sales than they had previously been doing. Now, the timing of this is interesting for a few reasons. Obviously, we just saw the price decrease from $15,000 to $12,000, so hopefully take rate increases from that change. The impact of an increased take rate would be more fully felt if more of that revenue is being recognized. And as average selling prices, excluding software options like FSD, not that that's a line item that Tesla reports, but one that they obviously have visibility to, as that margin contracts during this period of time of ramping up volume and macroeconomic pressure, having the contribution margin of software be more fully considered sure would be nice during a period of time like that. Plus, we now also have a new chief financial officer, obviously former chief accounting officer, but in that position, maybe the point of view has changed a bit on either how to manage or the recognition of the software option. So definitely an interesting thing to see, and of course we'll keep an eye on this and the impact that it has for the Q3 report in October. All right, a few other updates here. There seems to be some rumblings about Tesla and a megafactory in China. Of course, this has already been announced by Tesla, but we haven't heard a whole lot about it in the last couple of months. However, a Tesla China executive did comment on it a couple of days ago, saying that, quote, "We expect to start building the megafactory for energy storage products in the near future, and the products will be mainly used for export," end quote. So hopefully that is very soon. The reports that we had back in April was that construction might begin in the third quarter or in September. So maybe we'll hear something soon. All right, a couple of quick updates in Europe. As many of you know, we don't always look at the individual countries' sales for individual months or even for individual quarters, since there are so many things that cause fluctuations in those numbers. But there are people on the Tesla Motors Club website that do a great job of tracking these things. And from the available data, year to date, it looks like Tesla Europe has now crossed the number of registrations for Tesla vehicles in Europe for the entire year of 2022, already here in 2023. So with 4 months left to go in the year, that is a very nice milestone, worth celebrating. Not surprising as, of course, the ramp up of Giga Berlin. We've been expecting a big increase in Europe this year because of that. But of course, still very nice to see that progress. Also on Giga Berlin, Tesla has released a video celebrating the opening of their train shuttle at Giga Berlin, which can carry up to 400 riders per trip to and from the closest public train station to Giga Berlin. So nice to see that, and I'm sure a welcome transportation option addition for those employees. Finally, for today, we've got a quick update from the Wall Street Journal on the status of the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Funding. So we've talked about this for a couple of states, but the Wall Street Journal summarizing where things are right now. So far, 5 states, Ohio, Hawaii, Pennsylvania, Maine, and Colorado, have awarded $77 million of funds. So far, Tesla has earned $8.5 million or 18% of that total, which is more than any other company. Tesla's average bid, as we talked about, is coming in much lower than other bidders. Wall Street Journal is saying on average, that's about half of the cost. We've talked about all of this already, so I don't think we need to go into much more detail, but we'll continue to keep an eye out as more of these decisions are made. Remember, a lot of states to go, and this is going to unfold over the course of 5 years, so a lot of funding yet to go as well. All right, that is it for today then. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on X at Tesla Podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Tuesday, September 6th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.